Good morning and good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. Welcome to Why Do Smart People Keep Hiring Weak Salespeople. This is Tuck Mixon, and happy to have you here. Today we'll talk about why this happens so frequently, and we'll discuss how you can discover the secrets of hiring top salespeople. Before we get started, let's get a show of hands of who's here. Uh, you can either speak up or type in the chat. Um, if you're here and you want to speak up, say your name and where you're from and what you want to get out of this webinar. Otherwise, you can type that same thing in the chat. Not uncommon for people not to want to talk on a webinar. This is a little unusual, but that's what we like to do because you get more out of it when you do that. So if you don't want to speak, go ahead and type in the chat what you want to get out of this webinar. Thank you. I have Eric saying he wants to understand better why current hiring is not working. Bill is saying that he wants to understand what you do, how you help people hire better. So we'll do both of those things. Is there anything else that those of you who haven't spoken up in the chat yet would like to? Okay, we'll get started. So a quick run through of our agenda. I love this cartoon. There are many possible problems here. Most salespeople think this is pretty funny because they get the stiff arm from people buying. In this case, the king isn't open to the machine gun that's going to help him. There's also the possibility that while the sales guy got the advisors to say yes, he wasn't strong enough to get the king to stop and say yes. So today we'll talk about weak versus strong salespeople. We'll talk about why sales hiring matters. We'll get into the flaws of existing ways of hiring salespeople. We'll look at the results that you can get. And finally, we'll end with the secrets of how you and your company can consistently hire top salespeople. So a little preview, because this is why most people are here. People want better sales hiring results. Most companies that I talk to and work with will say it's kind of a crapshoot right now. We're about 50-50 with we're effective. When people are really honest, they may say, well, we do well 2 or 3 times out of 10. Either way, typical sales hiring, the process doesn't predict success, and that's why it's, again, a crapshoot. Why we can help you here is because looking at sales hires after, you can put in place a process that will predict with 95% accuracy whether that person will succeed. And we can also help you this 92% effective. 1 year later, 92% of those people in a third-party study were in the top half of the sales force after 12 months. I've got a question from Jamie saying, are we live? Jamie, are you hearing everything well? Type in the chat. So, Jamie, can you hear me now? Is everything fine? Just type in the chat if you're good. If you're having a technical issue, I apologize for that. And we'll if it's on your end, I'm sorry for that. If it's on our end, we'll make sure that if you can't get this today, we will get you access to a recording so that you can get what you wanted to come here for. Okay, we're going to move on. So let's talk about weak salespeople. When you have weak salespeople, and we'll define weak salespeople as people in the bottom half of your sales force. We all know that they struggle. When you're a sales manager or a business owner, sales leader, you get frustrated, and unfortunately, with weak salespeople, you often lose millions in revenue. In contrast, with strong salespeople, you get credit, you achieve goals, and you make a lot more money when your strong salespeople perform. So this chart on the lower right here, showing salesperson revenue between the top and the bottom half, you can see that the top 50%, as far as a percentage of quota, are at 159 versus only 49 for the bottom 50%. And that makes a huge difference in performance. So this previous year is a study of 50 sales forces at growing companies. There's another way to look at and evaluate salespeople, and that's to look at existing employees and evaluate them. And what we find is the data on thousands of employee sales evaluations backs up that many salespeople, unfortunately, are weak. As you can see here, 68% in the green are strong on commitment, which means 32% are not. And sometimes the reason salespeople fail is simply because their will to sell, the combination of all 5 of these competencies on the left here, their will to sell simply isn't strong enough to succeed in that sales role. And as a summary, about 40% of the people that are in their sales jobs, their will to succeed in sales just isn't strong enough. And that's why they're in the bottom 50%, and that's why they produce a lot less revenue. There are other challenges that salespeople have that aren't even skills related. We call them sales DNA. These 6 elements of sales DNA, from not needing approval to having beliefs that support you to being able to handle rejection, are important. And only 24% of the people are strong. A little over half are okay, and another 25% are weak when it comes to having strong sales DNA. So the combination of weak sales DNA and a weak will to sell results in people not performing. So when we look at how much it actually costs you as a company, if salespeople produce $1 million in revenue, quota is $1 million. The top 50% at 159% of quota do $1.5 million. The bottom 50% do $489, and the difference is $1.1 million. That's a huge difference. And that's the opportunity cost. When you add on the corporate burden and the direct hiring costs and the frustration, hiring weak salespeople is very frustrating. Looking at quota attainment in a little bit more detail, this is by quartile. You can see that the top quartile is at 208%. The second 25% is at 110%. The third 25% is at 79%. And finally, the bottom quartile is at about 15%, which, imagine what would happen if you eliminate the bottom half of your salespeople and you only hire people in the top 2 quartiles. Right? The numbers are big. And you can see on that same $1 million quota that someone in the top 25% actually produces over $2 million. We all know that with top salespeople, this is common, that they do double what the average is. And so the difference between your top 25% and your bottom 25% is huge. And when you can stop hiring those in the bottom and hire people that consistently reach the top 25% of your company, and therefore be in the top 25% of your industry, they win a lot more business. Here's an example on a 20-person sales force of what can happen where after a few years, instead of having standard distribution and average distribution, comparing that where you produce 20 million in revenue on a 20-person sales team. After a couple of years, where 3 out of 4 people are actually top 25% type performers, and then you have 20% and 5% in the middle categories, you get a 77% increase or $16 million off of a $20 million base. That's a big deal. And that's why it pays to have a strong sales force. So back to one of our questions, why do smart people keep hiring weak salespeople? There are a number of problems, and it comes down to being subjective rather than objective. Often there's a compensation mismatch where if a top salesperson in a role is worth 120 or 180 per year and you're paying less than that, you're not going to attract the right people. Subjective requirements like college degrees often get in the way. Flaws in advertising get in the way of even attracting the top people to apply for your role. Interviewing flaws, using assessments that look for certain personalities, and finally, imperfect judgment. All these things get in the way. And what we contrast that with is the predictive secrets of what is somebody's will to sell? Do they have it? And do they have strong enough sales DNA? And finally, do they fit with your sales role? When you combine all those things, not only in an assessment to help you up front know whether they're a fit, but in your interview process, where you can confirm all that, you can take a sales hiring process that's not working and you can turn it into one that works consistently. And when we talk about a predictive assessment, this is the assessment that we use, has been the top rated assessment for 7 years running, starting in 2011, and just awarded this week the top sales assessment. And it's been an effective assessment for 25 years. 1.6 million salespeople have been assessed, and so this is something that you can trust and you can believe in, and it can help you change the way you hire. So we mentioned a few of these reasons why hiring may not be working. It can start with compensation flaws. If you aren't recognizing what a top salesperson really produces, you may be not paying enough for a role, and therefore you might be having trouble attracting the right people, right? Your compensation needs to match the value of the role. And when it doesn't, you get too many mediocre salespeople. Interestingly, subjective job requirements and the story about Google. Google found that college degrees don't predict success. They have a number of people, and Google is probably one of the most in-demand places to work for. Something like 15% of their employees don't have college degrees. Many of them don't even have high school degrees. So a quick summary of the job requirements that don't predict success: college degrees, industry experience, and personality types. And compounding that is, if you don't know what's really required for success in a sales role, it's not a surprise that it's hard to hire people who will succeed. So what you can do is get a really clear picture of what separates your top people from others. And we help you do that. And you don't want to have your hiring criteria exclude good salespeople that would succeed in the role. So you want to eliminate the screens that don't predict success. Ads and interviews. Unfortunately, most companies do not know how to attract top salespeople. Most job ads just don't get top people to say, "That's me." And that's what you want, is when a top person reads your job ad for a sales role, you want them to say, "That's me." And if they're not telling you that, then your ads aren't working as well as they could. The other big thing in interviewing is, if you don't know how to interview salespeople, if you're trying to sell them on the role, rather than simulate the environment that they'll actually be in and challenge them, uh, you you won't really know who's a top candidate from someone who looks good in an interview but really can't handle challenges like a top salesperson can. Another one here, imperfect judgment. Unfortunately, we get emotional about the people we hire. And it's easy to fall in love with someone, maybe because they're just like you. Unfortunately, when you fall in love with people, they don't always work out. So the result of many of these things is you get smaller candidate pools. And when you fall in love with candidates and you don't know that they don't have the will to sell, or you don't know that they have weak sales DNA, you end up with a lot of non-performers. And let's just contrast our human imperfect judgment with simple algorithms. It turns out that very simple algorithms can beat human judgment by 25%. Right? The reality is that even experienced people who've hired salespeople all their life, they don't consistently identify the most qualified candidates. And this is from an article in the Harvard Business Review about 4 years ago. So here's the thing, is if you have a sophisticated algorithm that is actually predictive, then you can crush human judgment. And that's why we're here today, is we want to take where you are now, which may be poor results and wasted effort, and get you great results. So smart people are hiring weak salespeople because of all these problems on the left. And when you apply the predictive secrets of will to sell, knowing people's sales DNA, understanding their fit with a sales role, when you interview people well, and you use a predictive assessment, you can not only hire better people consistently, you can actually do it faster. And so now we'll get into an assessment that actually works. We talked about the will to sell. Here's an output of a dashboard that shows the will to sell. 5 will to sell competencies. The 2 most important ones are desire and commitment. When people don't have those things, the 25 years of experience from looking at the data, we find that if you don't have a strong will to sell, you just are unlikely to succeed. So it doesn't even make sense to interview people who don't have the will to sell for your role, or if their sales DNA is so weak that they're going to struggle in the role. Their beliefs get in the way of selling effectively. When we combine the objectivity of do you have the will to sell, and do you have the sales DNA required for this role, and our experience has shown that a simple sales role, transactional sales role, maybe route sales where you're taking orders and building relationships, you need lower sales DNA. You don't need to have top sales DNA. You could be 62, 63, 64, and be very effective in that role. So we, as a part of customizing the role to the assessment to your roles, we match the appropriate challenge of the role to what sales DNA we require. And we look at other things like, do you need to be competition resistant? Do you need to be a high ticket seller? Do you need to be able to sell value? Do you need to be able to hunt? Right? Some roles are hunting roles, others are account management roles. All those things get customized for your particular sales role. And because of that, you get a very accurate recommendation. In this example here, the recommendation, this candidate met the sales DNA requirement, they met the client criteria, they met the criteria that we discovered for longevity, and they had a high figured out factor. That's over here, the number is 76. And because of that, they'll ramp up faster than a typical candidate. So this example here, well, this person didn't have a, a high sales quotient, which is the overall bottom line number. The individual components were strong, and in this particular role, they look like they'd be very effective, and that's why they'd be recommended. So here's a look at candidate assessments, and compared to the employees, we've seen a difference in more people that are applying and taking this assessment during the hiring process. Are more employees have the will to sell. 76% of the candidates have the will to sell, and which is about 10 points higher, almost 10 points higher than existing employees. So unfortunately, most companies have existing employees who aren't committed. They may have low desire. They may not be motivated. They may be making way too many excuses. And all that impacts your revenue. And there are a lot of good candidates out there. And if we just look at will to sell, the vast majority of your candidates are going to have enough will to sell. The vast majority will be coachable, so you won't be frustrated teaching them the business. And if we look at how the percentage that have strong sales DNA, it's about a third of candidates. And this is candidates with 1 year of sales experience or more. If you have criteria where you want people that have 5 years of sales experience or 3 years of sales experience or more, those numbers would be higher. And so what this data on hundreds of thousands of candidates indicates is you can hire consistently these top candidates who are going to have the will to sell. They'll have the sales DNA, and they'll have the individual sales skills at a much higher level than existing employees. And that's why, comparing to a sales hiring process that doesn't predict success, where you get 50-50 results, you can, with high predictive accuracy, you can get 95. You can expect 95% of your people to be there after a year, and you can expect that over 92% of them will be in the top half of the sales force after 1 year. And after years 2 and 3, that's when those same good hires, those strong hires, that's when they go from reaching the top half to reaching the top quartile in your sales force. Let's contrast that with your worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is that instead of taking the assessment's hiring recommendation, someone falls in love with a candidate and hires people that are not recommended. Unfortunately, that's happened at many companies, and the data by an outside, respected, third-party company that did the predictive validity studies, they found that 75%, 3 out of 4 candidates had failed within 6 months. And only about 8% of the candidates that were not recommended, but hired anyway, made it to the top half of the sales force. And so what we found is, in contrast, you can have 95% stick around and 92% be in the top half after 1 year. Or if you don't follow the recommendations, you can have 75% fail within 6 months. So it's actually fortunate for the validation of the hiring tool that people have not followed the proven sales hiring process and hired the wrong people anyway. So this is just another indication. One of the most common questions we get is, are there enough strong candidates out there for us to hire? And what we find pretty consistently is that somewhere around 30% of the candidates that apply are going to be very strong and an even higher number if your sales role doesn't require someone so strong, an even higher number of the percentage of candidates that apply for your role will will have a high enough sales quotient, and they'll have the sales DNA, they'll have the will to sell for them to be very successful in your roles. So let's get into a better way to hire salespeople. On the left, we're looking at the traditional ineffective sales hiring process where you collect resumes, review resumes for many hours, call candidates, talk to them, interview them again, often interview them again, and then hope that they work out, right? For a 50-50 result. That's what we have here. And unfortunately, this process is labor intensive because you got to look at resumes, and it's just not a great process, right? To a 50-50 chance of success. The process on the right here, what we call the STAR process, takes much less time, 5 hours rather than 20 hours to get a candidate, where we still collect 50 resumes, ideally in an applicant tracking system. And if you don't have one, you don't have to invest in one your own. You can use an outside service. We help people do that if you don't have your own ATS. So you collect applications online. You, instead of reviewing resumes, you assess 30 of those 50 candidates using an accurate, predictive, proven sales candidate assessment, which takes you no time. And setting it up takes about 15 to 30 minutes up front. So a lot less time than it takes to review resumes. And out of that, you're likely to be interviewing, phone screening about a third of those candidates. So in this example, it's 10. So out of those 50, you're looking at 10 candidates who are recommended. And in your phone screen process, you narrow that down. You interview the top 3, and very often one out of those top 3 is a fantastic candidate, is a great fit for your role, and you're able to hire them. And when your people are not the bottleneck in this process, when you can keep the process moving, it's relatively easy to get a strong salesperson within 30 days. If your people that need to be doing the actual hour-long interviews, if they're really busy, that process can stretch out to 2 months, but it shouldn't take any longer than 60 days to get a very strong candidate. And so the results, again, a 90% plus success rate. You can expect that those people will be in the top half of the sales force within a year, and that the majority of those people that you select are going to end up as top 25% or even top 10% type performers. They will become your stars. You can do it in 75% less time. We call some STAR the sales talent acquisition team. And today we're inviting you to make STAR your proven sales hiring process. So we combine using the right assessment with the right hiring process, and you can do this as a STAR online member. And this is a 6-week online learning workshop. We teach you everything you need to know to transform your sales hiring process, from what do we need for this role, to how do we attract the right people, to how do we automate the process given the technology that we've got, to how do we phone screen, how do we hire, how do we interpret the assessments, right? It looks complicated now, but in my experience, you can literally tell within 30 seconds to a minute when you've got a good candidate, and what to be concerned about. And as an example, in this one here, the thing that you would ask about regarding their will to sell would be their outlook is not positive. So you want to explore why that is. And under sales DNA, this person does not have a very supportive buy cycle. So you want to discuss that. You also want to discuss how comfortable they are discussing money, because in many sales roles, the ability to have a financial conversation is important, right? A candidate who's this strong can learn to overcome the imperfections that they've got. And very often their outlook is a result of, if they're at a company right now that's not good, that can be the reason for their outlook. If you've got a strong company and you help people set goals, you can turn a candidate like this into a superstar. So back to inviting you to join STAR. You get ongoing support so that when new employees join the company, new sales managers, new HR people, you can plug new employees in. There's a community, and you get not only me, but my colleague Terry Slattery as your sales hiring experts who actually deliver this content. We do it because we frankly enjoy it. So here's a little outline of STAR. You're going to learn about the requirements and the red flags, and you will learn how to attract 2 to 10 times more top salespeople. Some people we talk to, frankly, are attracting none. And I know from using this process myself many times to help clients hire salespeople that it works. So again, you'll learn how to automate the process. You'll learn how to use their resume effectively, how to phone screen, how to interview better, how to make the right offer, and how to make that first 90 days productive with key things regarding onboarding. So again, the whole purpose here is to help you upgrade your sales force, and hiring the right people on your team is critical to getting that done. And we make it very simple for you to do. It's not a fire hose in a 1 or 2 day workshop. We do it over 6 weeks, and it makes it so that you consistently attract good people. You learn how to hire the right people, and you'll be very happy with it. If you're a small business, instead of investing in a 2-day live workshop where we come to your location and teach your team, if you've got up to 5 people in the hiring process, this investment in STAR Small Business is only $2,000. You can see where you can go register. It's bit.ly/STAR SMP, and that'll take you to my website, and you can register. We invite you to do that right now. If you're an enterprise, if you have more than 5 people in your hiring process and you want more help, if you have 20, 30, 40, 50, 100, 1,000 salespeople, you've got top performers in your roles and you've got bottom performers. And we do what we call a tailored fit for companies that have that many salespeople. The reason we do that is because we look at some specifics about what do your top people do that your bottom people don't. And by doing that tailored fit, we get 2 things. We take what are already great results, and we get even closer to 100% for you. And by doing the tailored fit, it also helps you see on your dashboard the tailored fit requirements get incorporated into your dashboard. And what that does for you is it just makes it even easier to spot how close somebody is to your top performers on it's typically 10 to 20 criteria that we identify that your top people have that your bottom people don't. So STAR Enterprise, we do the tailored fit, and we will actually write your first ad. This is a $2,000 value, and I know because I've written a lot of these ads. When you write the ad, that gets top people to say, "That's me." That is one of the key things you need to be able to do to get people to apply and join your company. So our Star Enterprise is a $17,000 value. It's only $5,000 when you do it online with us. And if you're ready to do that right now, go to bit.ly start it. And that'll take you to my website at trinitysalespartners.com, and you'll find the Star Enterprise. So if for whatever reason this link doesn't take you, you can go to trinitysalespartners.com and you can find either Star Enterprise or Star SMB on there. So a couple common questions that we get from people. Our business is different is the most common one. Our business is different, and so I don't think your process applies. I've been doing this for about 10 years, using this hiring process, and I've found in every business, whether that business is selling equipment, manufacturing equipment, selling software, selling insurance, selling financial services, selling printing, it doesn't matter. The principles behind why this work are the same. They don't not only apply across industries, they work in other countries. I've got a client who has operations in China, India, Europe, and Latin America. And one of the things that they were concerned about is, especially China, it's different in China. When we did the tailored fit analysis for their top people, we found that the people in China, the top performers in China, were just like the top performers in the USA. And so you can be confident that no matter what your business is, we can help you hire the right people. Second question we've addressed at once, can we really attract top people, especially in a tight hiring environment? And the answer to that, fortunately, is absolutely yes. Good people, top people, often are working, but they're looking because they're not happy. They may have a bad sales manager. They may have their territory shrunk. They may have had their compensation reduced because the owner thought that they're making too much money. All this happens. So top people are always looking. And that's why you can attract them. If you pay top people what they're worth, and of course, that doesn't mean overpay them. It means you pay them what they're worth. And when you give them a good environment, when you coach them and help them and not treat them like a prima donna, but when you treat them well, top people will stay. So yes, you can attract top people. Yes, you can hire them. And yes, they will stay. And what should you budget for hiring per salesperson? It's a great question. And of course, it matters a lot whether you're going to hire one or two people in 2018 or whether you're going to hire 100. There's a big difference in your cost per hire when you hire one versus 100. Here's some examples. If you're only going to hire one person, your license is going to cost you $2,500. So your license per hire is $2,500. On the other hand, a hiring license for 100 people is $40,000. So your cost per hire is only $400. Regardless, when you look at the actual value of hiring a top person, and again, on $1 million quota, the difference between someone in the top half versus the bottom half is over $1 million. And if in your business you don't do that much business, even at $100,000 difference in revenue, hiring top people is still worth it, whether you're hiring only one or whether you're hiring 100. Because what it really comes down to is it's going to cost you probably less than $7,000 to hire the right person. That's even if you're hiring one. And when you compare that to the likely 500,000 or maybe even $2 million in additional business. I've got a number of customers whose top people consistently produce year in, year out more than $2 million more than the average people. And compared to the people who aren't performing, it's probably $3 or $4 million. So yes, you absolutely can hire top salespeople, and fortunately, it's very affordable to do. So I appreciate your interest in the topic. And if you want to learn how to apply the secrets of hiring top salespeople, we'd love to help you. We make this easy whether you're a small business or a large enterprise. Go to the appropriate link, either bit.ly/SMB or bit.ly/enterprise, and join us. If you'd like to get a copy of the recording, email me. I know you've got my email, and I'll be happy to send you a link to that recording. If you've got questions, then email me, and let's set a time to talk. And I'll be happy to help you get your questions answered and see if we can help you. If we can't, that's okay. If we can, we'd love to help you. So thank you for joining us for Why Do Smart Salespeople Keep Hiring Weak Salespeople? And we look forward to seeing you on our STAR courses. And if you want to talk in the next week, I'm happy to do it. Final note, if you are hiring people in 2018 and you have the funds to invest in what we call a hiring license, there is a special discount available for doing that this year. You need to actually purchase the license and pay for it before year end. That discount is actually 33%, which means that you're going to save hundreds of dollars on a smaller license or thousands of dollars on a larger license. So it's probably worth your time to just check it out. And of course, if you're not hiring next year, you won't be able to take advantage of it, but you wouldn't be here if you weren't hiring next year. So contact me and I'll be happy to help. So that's all for now. Thanks for joining.